want to start by saying I did not know Kevin Samuels personally, so everything that I have to say in this video is strictly my opinion, my thoughts on the matter. Kevin Samuels was a community architect. He was not a relationship guru. I say again, Kevin Samuels was not a relationship guru. Kevin Samuels believed in relationships. He understood that marriage was the foundation from which to build. Marriages in a community are the building blocks of the foundation. What he was doing, in my opinion, was he was rebuilding the black community, which has completely fallen apart since the early 60s. Ultimately, what would occur following the natural path and trajectory would be rebuilding of America, because contrary to what people say and believe, white follows black, not the other way around. I can go deep into this. I can do a complete video on it. I'll just take one slice. In the early 60s, the single motherhood rate in the black community was between 23 and 25%. The white single motherhood rate at that time was 3 to 5%. We now have a single motherhood rate in the black community at roughly 80%, and the single motherhood rate in the white community is at 30%. I have a video on the problems with single motherhood. I believe that Mr. Samuels' vision was to actually rebuild the community, not just get people together. Getting people together was just the first step. I believe Mr. Samuels was an intelligent man. I have wrestled back and forth with the level of his intelligence. At times, I believe his IQ is higher than mine. I am a member of Mensa. And then other times, I believe his IQ was more in the mid 120s, 125-ish range. And I believe that because of how he spoke with people. I also hold a mastermind classification in relational thought. I believe that Mr. Samuels would have scored very high on a relational thought test. For the record, holding the mastermind classification in relational thought is extremely rare, even amongst those with high IQ. Mr. Samuels appeared to where he could see how all the pieces fit together. So many people think in a linear fashion, and I did not see linear thinking from Mr. Samuels, which the higher your IQ, the less you think in a linear fashion. Yet he was able to explain concepts in a linear fashion. There seem to be a lot of people right now that have a lot of negative to say about Mr. Samuels. They're coming out trying to attack him. They couldn't refute him when he was alive, so now they're trying to do it in his death because he's silent. I challenge any of you to listen to his content and answer the question, how could that hurt me? Even if you disagreed with what he had to say, how could doing it harm you in any way, shape, or form? It's not a joke or a surprise or some unknown out there in the world that the majority of women are overweight and obese, many morbidly obese. This is so bad. They now have created the fat acceptance movement. How is you losing weight going to harm you? Ask yourself that question. How is thinking about the numbers involved in what you wish to acquire in life going to hurt you? How is coupling with a man or a woman and staying with them going to hurt you? It's actually the base for building generational wealth, which I've heard women say that on Mr. Samuels' podcast that he had. He would point out to the women that they weren't making any money. The money is still with the men, period. The higher paying jobs are the dangerous ones. And the dangerous jobs are the jobs that are filled by men. So you're really better off as a woman to couple with a man. And then over time, even if you're average middle class, you're not any of this high-end stuff, you purchase a home, and over time you get the home paid off. This turns into wealth for you. This turns into something that can be passed on to your children. We've become a throwaway society. Disposable society. It's cheaper to buy a new one than it is to fix what we've got. As a society, we've taken this to relationship. Out of all the haters that are coming out of the woodwork, I think the most accurate of the group concerning Mr. Samuels was Creflo Dollar, but not in the way that Mr. Dollar thought. See, Mr. Dollar attempted to paint the portrait that Mr. Samuels was a false prophet. And in the end times, it does say that false prophets will appear. But what Mr. Samuels caused was the false prophets to expose themselves. Something else that Mr. Samuels spoke on was image. And I have to agree with him. The image of the black community. George Floyd was a martyr. George Floyd was a criminal that was on drugs when he was arrested. And the autopsy report said the drugs killed him. Black Lives Matter. These people have accepted donations. I've seen story after story after story about no money came from Black Lives Matter into the community where they say a tragedy occurred. Kevin spoke on the illiteracy rate of black boys, and he was 100% correct. But to Image, I'd caught a video last night on the Lapeef network, and there was a gentleman on there, I even commented about it, who was running his mouth, is in a hoodie. What he had to say, in my opinion, was exactly the image that Mr. Samuels was trying to get black people away from. Put your best foot forward. There were women that would argue with him because he said, don't wear the bonnet outside. You can go to Walmart and there are women walking around in there in pajamas. What happened? We were a society where, for the record, I'm 59. Mr. Samuels was 56 when he passed away. We were a society where we always tried to look and do our best, no matter what that was. If a holy t-shirt was the best you had, that's how you presented yourself. Mr. Samuels had Suit Saturday. He wanted young men to wear a suit one day a week. He knew that other people would see them differently in a positive way. And he knew that that would grow, that it was a seed. He was planting a seed. If you listen to Mr. Samuels when he spoke, something else, in my personal opinion, that black community needs to stop doing, and there's no reason that y'all do it, with this, that. You were raised in the same country I was. You were taught the same English I was. And you're fully capable of using proper English. This is bad for your image. I have a friend of mine, younger man, he's 35, black, and that's his biggie. He's like the bonnet women and the women that argued with Mr. Samuels about smiling. Just looking friendly. Looking approachable just to say good morning. He's hooked on that. Whiff and this and that. Buying rental properties right now, I said, you're going to hit a point, you're going to hit a brick wall. I said, because you're going to have to deal with white people, period. And upper class black people, eventually. You're going to have, and they're not going to put up with that. They're just going to cut you off to the side. You'll still go ahead and do what you're doing, but you won't be able to grow past that point. But this is part of what he was talking about, I believe he was talking about when he spoke of image. Present yourself as a respectable human being. Stop letting the media and groups like Black Lives Matter, there are women, and the women have gone totally out of control. And it's not just black women, it's all women. Totally out of control. Or maybe I shouldn't say all.
Not all, but most.
The concepts that Mr. Samuels spoke on concerning relationships are nothing new. These are just core biblical concepts on relationships. That's all it is. The feminists and the women who have bought into this, and actually we've allowed it, we the men have allowed this to go on for so long that now it's core in everybody, male and female. And these feminists are trying to re-engineer relationships. But what they don't understand, they've never read the mission statement of the feminist movement. And part of that mission statement states the destruction of the family. For any of you who are trying to figure out how to make this work, it won't. The only way it works is the way Mr. Samuels presented. You can either accept it or not. Mr. Samuels spoke of black people need to create their own media companies. And I agree. I agree 100%. The problem with the media we have now is it paints black people in a very bad light. Yet at the same time try to paint them as victims. And that was something else that Mr. Samuels refused to accept. You're not a victim. You are what you decide you are. And it's true. This is America. You can be whatever you want. But if you are going to keep sitting there waiting for someone to save you, it's not going to happen. The only person that's going to save you is you. Who do you believe gave Mr. Samuels the success he had? Honestly, do you think he went out there and made it for himself? Or do you think somebody handed it to him? I don't understand why so many people, I guess it's money, but why so many people were so against and resistant to what he had to say, yet call themselves champions for the black man. What they're saying has not helped. Things have just gotten worse. For all of you out there that are hating on Mr. Samuels at this time, I feel sorry for you. I truly do. It says a whole lot more about you than it does about him. I believe Mr. Samuels was a great man. I believe he had a great vision. And I honestly believe that he filled a need, and that the hunger for the food he was giving was so strong That's why he became as popular as he did. I believe somebody needs to pick up. I don't expect you to be Kevin to pattern what he was doing. Have live call-ins with both men and women. I do believe him splitting them up as far as women calling on these days, men calling on these days. I believe that was a good way of doing it, because the thought process that goes in to communicating with men and communicating with women is different. You can tell both of them the exact same truth, but when men speak to men, they speak differently than when men speak to women. And when women speak with women, they speak differently than when women speak with men. I had heard a woman make this statement about how can a man tell a woman what she needs to be? And Mr. Samuels, he did very well with this, because we're the ones that you want. See, he said, you belong to me. The children belong to you, and I belong to God. Jesse Lee Peterson out of Los Angeles has said this for quite some time.
That order is God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children.
This is the natural order of things. Mr. Samuels will be greatly missed by everyone, those that loved him and those that hated him. But I really ask all of you that hate him and have so much negative to say, what did he say that would be harmful to you? What did he say? He's right. I've got a video up. Fastest growing group of homeless people is women 55 and up. He's right. It's coming. And the problem is, this is going to break the back of any nation that has to deal with it financially. You can't just print money. And even then, we in America have proven that throwing money at a problem doesn't fix it. We, as a nation, are becoming weaker and weaker because we keep settling for less qualified. And a perfect example is the Biden administration and their choice for nominee for the Supreme Court. Mr. Biden said he was going to choose a black woman. Okay, so if we drill down on this, the black community makes up 13%. Women are 51% of that. We'll just call it 50-50. So 6.5%. He's going to pick from 6.5% of the population. If we ratio that out, that's 6.5% of the possible qualified candidate. We have eliminated 93.5% of people strictly because of color and sex. This is not the way to build a strong community. Mr. Samuels understood that. That's why he wanted you to be your best that you could be. What is wrong with that? How can it possibly harm you to be your best? That's it for me. Y'all have a great day, and I'm out.